What's that?
Jim here, and welcome back to the Natsuge Retro Game Center here in Tokyo. Today, we are counting down my personal top 10 arcade games of 1981. Let's do it.
10!
At number 10, we have the original Konami arcade classic that is Frogger. This is a game that no matter when you play it is always fun, which is the mark of a truly great arcade game. The premise is as simple as can be. Just get your frogs from the bottom of the screen up to the top while avoiding obstacles and trying not to fall into the water, which admittedly seems counterintuitive because frogs can swim, but hey, it's video game logic. Anyway, this game is and always will be great, and when something this good is in the number 10 spot, you know 1981 was a good year for arcade games.
9!
What? Another Konami classic? Yes. It's Scramble, and wow, 1981 was a good year for Konami indeed. It's no secret that I'm a huge shoot-'em-up fan, and old-school Konami shooters like Gradius and Life Force are some of my favorites, and Scramble is essentially a prototype for games like that. In this side-scrolling shooter, you'll maneuver your spaceship through various alien worlds, shooting lasers and dropping bombs to destroy enemies, and especially the fuel depots that you'll need to keep your ship in the air, and that's it. Blow up as much as you can for as long as you can. Again, nice and simple, and that's just the way I like it. It's Scramble. An awesome game as well as an important one. And while we're at it, let's throw in Super Cobra, making number 9 a 2-for-1 spot because they're both essentially the same game, just with a different ship and setting. Either way though, they are both top-notch shooters and a good indicator of what we'd eventually be seeing from Konami.
8!
For number 8, we jump from an early Konami shooter to an early SNK shooter with Vanguard. This game is notable for the fact that as you progress, it goes from scrolling horizontally to diagonally to vertically, all in a single stage, and you can shoot in multiple directions to deal with the various enemy ships coming at you. And you can occasionally grab an invincibility power-up that acts kind of like Star Power from Super Mario Bros. It's a lot of fun, a very good example of a classic shooter, and it's another game that set the stage for future shoot-'em-ups that would become my all-time favorites. It's Vanguard, and it's awesome.
7!
At number 7, we have Quicks by Taito, and yes, that's how it's pronounced if you're reading the Japanese katakana, even though for decades I was convinced this game was called Kicks. This is about as simple as a video game can get. You've got a big, empty square in the middle of the screen that you are tasked to fill up with color by drawing lines and simple geometric shapes. You have a fast draw button and a slow draw button, and you get double points for creating shapes with the slow draw. The obstacle in your way, though, is the titular Quicks, a multicolored glowing stick that randomly bounces around the screen, and to touch it while drawing a line equals death. Fill in 75% of the screen to move on to the next stage, and of course, as you progress, the game becomes just that much harder. It's fun, it's addictive, it's kid-tested, mother-approved. It's Quicks.
6!
I've always wanted to know, what is the difference between Pac-Man and Ms. Pac-Man, really?
Well, she has a bow in her head.
At number 6, it's not just Pac-Man with a bow, it's so much more than that. It's Ms. Pac-Man. And yeah, never mind, it is kind of just Pac-Man with a bow, some rouge, and lipstick, but Lest we forget, the maze has also been made much larger, and there are now a variety of mazes instead of just one, which is very cool. It really keeps you on your toes, assuming pack people have toes, and the point bonuses also move around through the maze, making them more elusive. In short, Ms. Pac-Man takes the classic gameplay of the original game and changes just enough to make it feel like a proper sequel, and the end result is an incredibly fun and addictive game that, like the original, never gets old. In fact, if there wasn't already a Pac-Man before this one, it'd probably be my favorite arcade game of 1981, but as it stands, Ms. Pac-Man sits comfortably at number 6 because it's awesome. Coming in at number 5, we have the one and only Gorf, which, if you've never played it, it's kind of like a greatest hits of classic arcade shooting games, because it features a variety of stages that change the gameplay in ways that, in one instance, make it feel like a game of Space Invaders, a game of Galaxian the next, and even a sort of 3D stage that, at least visually, might remind you of games like Gyrus or Tempest. There's even a boss battle with a giant spaceship with defensive shields enabled, which must have been quite impressive at the time. All of these elements combined make for a game that is sure to please any fans of early 80s arcade shooters, and it's a game that I can happily go back to any day. It's Gorf, and it's all kinds of awesome.
4!
At number 4, we have the often imitated but never duplicated arcade classic by Atari, that is Centipede. A lot has been said about this game over the years, and there's not much more I can add to the conversation, except to say that this is an excellent game. It's extremely fun and addictive, blasting away bugs, mushrooms, and the titular centipede, progressing from stage to stage as the enemies get faster, and space becomes more limited until eventually the only way out is death. Or at least until you put in another quarter, or yen in my case. Regardless, get ready to empty your pockets of coins, whatever currency they may be, because Centipede is a game that is so awesome, you'll happily go broke playing it.
3!
Coming in at number 3, we have the Namco shooting classic and follow-up to Galaxian. It's Galaga, and man, do I really love this game. It feels like I've played a million different versions and ports of it over the years, and I've played it quite a lot on MAME, but there's still nothing quite like finding an original Galaga cabinet and dropping a few coins in it. In terms of gameplay, it has a lot in common with Galaxian, but it's updated in every way. It looks better, it sounds better, and the gameplay itself is faster. The enemies are much trickier than they were before. You can get dual ships for double the firepower, which is cool, and there are even some bonus stages thrown in for good measure. Just like they did with games like Rally X and Pac-Man, Namco put a lot of passion and creativity into Galaga, which once again resulted in one of the all-time greats in the annals of arcade gaming history.
2!
At number 2, we have the absolutely epic Atari classic that is Tempest. And just like with the top 2 in the video for 1980, this was a very tough call because we're talking about some of the best arcade games ever made and some of the best games in general, really. With Tempest, we're talking about some of the smoothest, most fun, most addicting, most challenging gameplay of any classic arcade game. If you've never played it before, each of the game's 99 different screens features a unique geometric shape that you maneuver around using a twisting knob-style control scheme as you blast away at the enemies coming at you from the background into the foreground. It's some seriously fast-paced and frantic gameplay, coupled with those beautiful retina-melting vector graphics and instantly recognizable sound effects that make this one of my favorite classic arcade games, and in my opinion, the second best game of 1981.
1!
And the #1 arcade game of 1981 is out of order, but it's Donkey Kong.
At #1, we have the game that put Nintendo on the map all those years ago, and that is the original platforming masterpiece that is Donkey Kong. And just like with Pac-Man, it might seem pretty predictable, but what can I say? DK is expected to be #1 because it's such a great game, and despite how simple it is, literally just moving left or right, jumping and climbing ladders, it's a very challenging game that requires a lot of dedication and time to get better at. On top of that, for being one of the earliest platforming games, it gets the formula down right away and serves as a template for all of the platformers that followed. It features some great visuals and sound for 1981 and introduced a cast of characters that would become the most popular and recognizable in the history of video games, and most importantly, Donkey Kong is a very fun game that countless millions of people have enjoyed over the past 4 decades. It's a true classic, and it's awesome.
There you go, everybody, my top 10 arcade games of 1981. Let me know down in the comments what you thought of the video and what are your favorite arcade games from 1981. I'd like to know. And come back next time, we're going to count down the top 10 arcade games of 1982. So thanks for watching, everyone, and we'll see you next time. Goodbye.